All right, so updating is also in two ways or in two forms or two steps. That is, the update would clear the field. I mean, not clear the field. The update would actually make the field editable, but then the data will still be there. It won't clear it. Then you make changes to whichever field you want to make changes to, and then you click on save to save, right? So once you click on save, it will take the old new data and then go and make the changes in the database. All right. So the same way we are going to use the command builder to do that. So when we create a command builder, we are going to use the same principle we use for the let's say the navigate record to do same things with this one. All right. So let's try, and then the same thing we did here, we'll do here. So when we click here, we will just make this place editable. So once we make it editable, then we disable this, disable this, disable that, and then we'll only be left with these three buttons. So once we, we'll only be left with these two buttons that we can either cancel or we can save. So if we decide to save after making those changes here, then the data will be written permanently. If we decide to cancel, then we cancel. All right. So let's quickly go and then do this write-up. The same principle that we use here. So we'll have to commit this, do that, and do that. So we could just copy this, and then we paste it here. That is btn commit is disabled. So btn commit enabled is false. btn add is false. btn update is false. btn delete is false. btn cancel is true. And then btn save is true. btn save that enabled is equal to true. So these are the two buttons that will be enabled. Now we are not going to clear the record. We are just going to enable the control, right? So once we enable the control, then we say, please maybe make the change maybe and select save. So that is basically how we end. So we basically just go ahead and then disable and enable. And then the most important thing here is that we call the enable control, which will basically go ahead and then make these areas editable. So once we make them editable, then we can now make the changes. And when the changes are made, then we click on this button to now make the saving. All right. So we have time command builder as new OLEDB LDB command builder. Then we have to, in the same way, we can link these other guys to this. So if we want, we can even call the add record, right? But let's create this from scratch and see how it will end. So data set dot tables dot data set dot tables. Which tables are we talking about? We are talking about the address book, and then dot rows. So the same method that we used earlier on. So the same inc dot item 1. Is equal to, then you have txt f name dot text. So if you just go to this side, you see the navigate record, the direct opposite. So if you just take the equal sign and bring it here, bring the equal sign here, bring the equal sign here, it becomes what we are just writing here. All right, so you could just copy this here. And bring it here. So this time, instead of this, you have this. So the direct opposite, as I said, we could have gone ahead and even use the first one we created for this. But let's not confuse ourselves. Let's quickly just type this. So here we are just doing the right opposite. We are creating a link between the things that are lying on the user interface, that is, the controls lie on the user interface, and then some portions of your database table. So you link the text boxes to different areas of your database. In fact, today we have learned 2 ways of doing that. The first way is here. So data row dot item, where we use the names of the columns themselves. And then here we are using, instead of using the names of the columns, we are using the rows, and then that's the row indexes, and then the item indexes. All right. So these are the 2 ways that we can do this. So once you are done, so you would decide when you are doing your project work, or when you are working on things like this, you will decide which one is easier for you, whether you are more comfortable using the column names or you are more comfortable using the indexes. Now, depending on which one best works for you, you choose it. There's none that is better than the other. All right. So once we create a connection, the same way we call our data adapter.update. So we update our data set, right? But then we update a specific table in the data set, which is the address book. So once we do that, then we know our update is done. So the next thing now will be the cosmetics. Now how to enable and disable things. So we just copied the ones that we already enabled and disabled, and then we would come and do the opposite. Because as it stands now, the only things we want to work afterwards, so we have to enable this, enable this, enable this, and then disable this, and disable this. So just the usual enabling and disabling. So commit definitely will continue to be disabled. Then we will have add would be enabled true, update enabled, that's true, delete enabled, enabled true, cancel enables false, save enable false. So that is 3 false, 3 true. Okay. Now after this, we will disable the control, right? So once we disable the control, then we print a message that says that the update was successful, right? So we could so message update successful. It's successful. So once you are successful, once you get here and you are still going, it means yes, the update truly happened. If the update does not happen, so we print out our message that says that an exception has been identified. So we take that exception and then we convert it to string, and then we output it. All right. So the next button to program is actually the cancel button, right? So cancel button basically just brings, so basically you start edit. When you do the add, it will clear all this. It will make it editable, right? Then it will be disable these buttons and other things. So what this button just does is that it will reverse all that. So it will make this read only again, then it will enable whichever buttons need to be enabled, and then it will stop. All right, so that one, there's no any technicality in it. The delete will find a particular index, and then it will delete that data that is at that particular index. Also, not too technical, but we'll program that very quickly. To program the delete, we would first of all have to confirm from the user whether he really wants to delete. If he really wants to delete, then we proceed to identify what exactly he wants to delete, and then we perform the delete. If he cancels, then nothing happens. All right, so we first of all start with that. If, let's say, okay, let's use a try. So try catch. So if the message box will show Do you really want to delete these records? Then delete. Then so we use the yes no button. Yes no. Okay. The icon should be maybe warning or question. Yes, let's make it a question. And then the default button, we have message box, the default button, so maybe button 1. Let's make it button 2, which should be no, right? Okay, so once we do that, so it's equal to dialog no, then what should happen? So let's print another message box. Let's show, okay, operation cancelled. So if the user decides to choose no, it means he doesn't really intend to delete the data. So once he doesn't intend to delete the data, we exit the sub procedure. So else, if he selects yes, then we create a command to do the deletion. So dime command builder as new OLEDB command builder. And we pass the data adapter to it. The command builder, we didn't pass data adapter to it. That's a recipe for disaster. So once we now I'm not talking about else, just else. So once we pass that, the next thing will now be to find a row and delete it, right? So we will have data set dot tables brackets address book dot rows so that particular row with that particular index, then you delete it. Then you subtract 1 from the total number of rows. So you have max rows is equal to what? Max rows minus 1. Then you move to the first record after deleting. That one is basically irrelevant in these decisions. So what I mean is you can just decide where to move to after the data is deleted. Now remember, the deleted item was actually the one that was selected. So once you remove it from the list, you have to choose which one should be selected for display in each place, right? I have decided that, okay, you should go to the first item. So you can decide wherever you want it to go to. So if it goes to the first item, then we will have Houston being equal to 0. So after that, then we can just update our data by using the data adapter.update method, and then filling the data set. I mean, taking the data from the data set, specifically the address book. So once we do that, then we need to clear all the information from after deleting it. We have to clear its information from the user interface, right? So clear record. And then after that, then we will now have to display an alternative record, which is why we made the ink equal 0. So we navigate record. Navigate record. So navigate records, and then we end it there, and then we output the alternative. What if there's an error? So we say X as message box dot show as what's happening. So X dot to string so that is with the delete. So first of all, you check whether the person, the user really intends to delete. If he does, then you proceed to create a command builder and then pass your data adapter to it. And then you create, that is, you identify the particular row index that is supposed to be deleted. And then you pass that row index and then you delete. So once you delete, you subtract 1 from the maximum row so that you always keep an accurate number of rows in the table, because that's what you need for the navigation. If you delete without actually letting it reflect in the maximum row, and you begin to get errors because your ink will be out of range. Then that was the out of range exception. All right. So once you do that, then you just quickly call the update method of the data adapter, and then you clear all the records from this. Remember, after deleting the data, the record will still be in your text boxes. You actually deleted the data in the memory. So the next thing you do is to clear it from the text boxes, and then you display the new records, right, that you've selected to display. All right. So that is basically where we are with that. So when we come to the cancel, as I said, with the cancel, we are not really doing much. All you need to do is you just remember there was you cleared the data or you removed the read-only property and then you are displaying some data that you want to edit. Now, if we want to cancel that edit, in the case of, let's say, adding new record, the form is empty. So what you do is you call navigate record so that you repopulate the form. All right. Then you, as usual, do the enabling and then disabling of the button so that the logic will flow. Then your users will not be clicking on buttons to cause trouble for yourself. So we navigate record. So we are calling navigate record because the user has decided he wanted to insert data or he wanted to update data. So if he wants to insert, the data is already not there. So if you call navigate record to populate the data in the index. So once you navigate record, you print out a message to the user telling him the status. That is, you tell him that he stopped editing, right? So you say editing stopped. All right. So after that, then the usual button setup. So btn the usual thing. So you enable 1, 2, 3, and then disable 1, 2, 3. That's all. So btn commit. btn cancel dot enable all right, so btn cancel dot enable is false. btn commit not enabled false. btn save enabled false. btn add enabled true. btn update enabled true. btn enabled okay, delete okay, so that is that. So the next thing that we would do is to now go ahead and program this 1, 2, 3 items, right? So the first is the search, all right? So this search here is basically going to bring out an input box and allow the user to enter a particular contact ID. Then your application will search for the ID. If you find the ID, call navigation record and pass the ID to it to display the data here. All right. So that is a very straightforward code. Now this one is it's not so much of a database kind of thing. It's because we are not using a query to do this search. I think maybe next week we will learn how to use queries to do the search. Now we are just using the indexes of the table to try to find an item, and then we display it. All right. It is not a very effective way, but it is always a way that is available anytime we want to quickly resolve some issue. We want to quickly find some information, right? So we can always use that. So we will create some variables. That is, we'll create an ID. This is an algorithm we used last semester to search for items, right? So it's not so different from that algorithm. Here we just introduce the fact that the data is being, the search is being conducted on a database and not the ordinary arrays that we perform our search. So in this case, we create an ID. That is what we'll be using to receive the user input. So we say time ID as string. So that's what we use to receive the user input. Then we'll create a static variable which we use to receive the index of the particular row that the item was found. So when an item is found in a particular row, the row index is actually stored in the keep ID, right? So that's a static keep ID as integer. This ID, we can make it integer, we can make it string. All right, let's keep it as integer and see if the code will complain. So as integer. Then when it is found, right, we want to know whether it is found or not. So we create a variable that we use to test whether it is found or not. So time is found as boolean is equal to false, right? So we want it to be false by default. So in the beginning, you say int is equal to 0. All right. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to, first of all, find a variable that we'll use to receive the user input. Another variable we'll use to receive an index whenever a particular item is found on a particular row. So we want to keep that row's index. Then we want to use these variables, these Boolean variables, to check when an item is found, it will be true. If an item is not found, it will be false, right? Something like that. All right. So we want to start our search from the first row. So we make the int to be 0. So we want to start our search from the first row. So after this, the first thing we'll do is actually to try and get the value from the user, right? By using an input box. So we try, and then ID is equal to input box, right? So we have please enter an ID to search. So once you do that, then we first of all check if the user input, the user did not enter anything and just submit an empty form. What should happen? There should be a message. There should be a message telling the user that he needs to supply a value to proceed, right? So we have the message box to show that says you must enter a value search. Then you exit the tab. So else, if the user provides a value, the user provides a value, what should happen? Now that's when the search should begin. Now once the user provides a value, then you do while int is less than max row so if ID is equal to data set dot tables that's address book dot rows int. So we are trying to retrieve that particular row that they are in at that particular time. So dot item. So we are targeting the person ID field. All right. So if whatever the user has entered is equal to some, let's say a particular, so when we start, we said that int is 0. So we start from 0, the first, in the first row. So you take the first row, which is row 0, item PID. So when you take the first column of the first row, you check, is it equal to this? If not, what do you do? So we'll get here, and then we'll put in an increment to this, and we'll move to the next one. So we keep doing this while loop until we run out of items to check. That is when int is equal to max rows, then we know that we are at the end. But if not, we continue to do until such a point where ID is equal to something, that is whatever the user has entered matches something that is inside this column. Now, once that happens, then we put that particular row that contains that particular value, right? We'll use that to now go and call navigate record to display that particular record. All right, so once we check and it's equal to, what do? We say keep ID is equal to ink, right? So we want to save that particular value, that particular row ID, right? And then at that point, we say it's found is equal to true if whatever the user enters matches any ID in the table, right? And in that case, we'll stop the try. So once so we exit try. So we have do while this, that. So the next thing would be that we want to increase the ink by 1. Because if we check, let's say we get here, the user has entered something, then we check, and then we realize that whatever the user has entered doesn't match. What do? We proceed to go and add 1 to this and come back, and then we do it again and see that whatever the user has entered doesn't match. Then we come here, add 1. So we keep doing till such a point where whatever the user enters matches something that is inside the first column of that particular row. Then we take note of that row by writing the value of the row into this keep ID. And then we make this one equal true, and then we exit. That means we have found whatever we are looking for. Then we will now come to this side and then continue our process. All right. So once we do that, let's say we increase this by 1. Then the next thing would be to now do the catching, right? So once we are done, we catch. All right, so we say catch message box to show, then we will have x dot to string. Okay. So after that, we now come out of this all. So by the time we get here, it's either we have found it or we haven't. So if we have found it, this is found here is equal to true. If we haven't found it, it is still going to be equal to false. So we will check if it's found, then what do we do when we find it? Then we should now make int to be equal to what? Keep ID. That is, we now make that ID that we stored in this keep here. We are now going to use it to call navigate record by assigning it to the ink, right? Then we use it to navigate record. That is, we use it to to display the particular row that contains the particular item that was found. All right. If we don't, it's not found. If it's found, it's not true, right? It means we didn't find what we are looking for. Then we have to print a message telling the user that record not found, right? So that's basically the whole code. So first of all, we create these variables. This is what we use for the user input. This is what we use to store a temporal storage of the index of the row that we found whatever the user is looking for in. And then this is to check whether we have found whatever we are looking for or not. This is still the row index. And then we made it 0 so that we can start searching from the first row. So we started here by accepting a user from a value from the user, and then checking to be sure that we proceeded only after the user has provided a value in the input box. Once the user has provided a value in the input box, we would move from row to row, checking whether whatever the user has entered is actually, it matches one index or matches any index in the index column. Once it is able to match with any of them, then it will identify the particular row that we have found the item in, and then it will assign the row ID to this keep here, just for a temporal holdup. Then it will turn is found to be true, and then it will exit this try structure. That is, it will exit it and get to this side. So it will exit it to this place. Once, as soon as it finds what it's looking for, there's no need to produce to proceed. It will exit. Then by the time it exits, so it will exit on two conditions. That is, either it has found a value, or either this condition here becomes false. That is, maximum rows become equal to or greater than the index. That is, the index becomes bigger than maximum row or equal to maximum row. In that case, we know that we haven't found what we are looking for. So we will exit. All right. So once we get here, if we found what we are looking for, then we pass the temporal value back to int, and then we call navigate record to display that record on the interface. If we don't find, if it's found is not equal to true, it means we didn't find what we are looking for, then we'll exit also. So that is all what we have here. So this code here is mostly the same as what you find with the SQL database, right? So if we should run this code here, just to be sure that everything is working. So once we are here, we could search from here. So let's see, number 4. So number 4 is here. So let's see number 7. Number 7 is here. So you see that the search is working. So we did the adding, we didn't check the updating. So let's check the update. So number 7, we have up now. So what can we change here? So we can add 3, the last name, to see whether it is actually working. So update successful. So we could add, we could close the program. So that's 7. So we close the program and rerun it again and search for number 7 to see whether we'll find Abna 3. So number 7, so we find Abna 3. So the update works. So let's look for something to delete. See, because we added something there. Okay, so we added something here as number 24. So let's see if we can delete that. Are you sure you want to delete this record? We say yes, we want to delete it. So it came back to number 1 as we indicated. So let's look for number 24 and see if we can find it. Number 24 not found. So let's look for number 23. If we can find it. Number 23. 23 is there. So if we move next, where do we go to? Went to 25 because 24 is not there. So we see that all the options here are working, and then we will move to the next section of this work. Okay. So we need to program these two things here. This here is exit, so meet the close. Visual meet the close. And then the next one is what we will use to open the next form. So we have, what's the name of the form? So we have SQL start contact app dot show dialog. Okay, so let's see what we have here. So this is the SQL form. So we would go back there and have a look at what to expect with those of you who are actually doing the SQL. You are using the SQL database management system. We set out to create this database system that we would use to manage contacts. So today we are working with just one table. So we managed to connect that table and brought the data into our user interface. And when we were able to do that, we were able to navigate. We use only text boxes. That is, next week we'll try and use other items, and then we would use some controls such as brief view and other things, so that we will see how those ones are also used. And then we're able to add, to delete, to update, and we're able to fetch, and so on and so forth. So this is this brings us to the end of the lesson. So everybody is supposed to try their hands on it from beginning to end. Hopefully you all have both Access and SQL, so that you try that out and see what the differences are and how to actually deal with these things. So as soon as you do that, there will be a link on the course page for everybody to upload their work as we usually do. So you run the tutorial to the end, then you upload your final product. That is, you take screenshots of it as well as the code, and then you upload it on the course page as your assignment. So this is it. See you next week for your feedback and all that. So have a good day, and then enjoy the day.